Phoenix, please welcome your Congressman and U.S. Senate candidate, Ruben Gallego.
Hola, Arizona. Hello, everybody. Buenas noches and good evening. It's so great to be here with so many of you with 13 days till the end of the election. Because guess what? We are already voting right now. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ruben Gallego. I'm a dad, a husband, a congressman, and your next U.S. Senate candidate. And I'm a very, very proud Arizonan. Before I ran for office, I had the privilege of serving the United States in the Marine Corps. And it was, there's a couple Marines here, so we're in a very, very, very safe environment now. But what motivated me to serve was because I truly believed in this country, and I still do. And I wanted to repay this country that gave me, the son of immigrants, such a great shot at the American dream. And though my deployment was not the easiest, I served with one of the hardest hit units in the war, and I lost way too many friends. I did learn some hard lessons. I did learn that the government will be very quick to send you to war, but not necessarily take care of you when they got back. I was very disappointed when I did the utmost to protect my family, my friends, my Marines and civilians, and the honor of this country. But when I got to the VA, they refused to take care of me and my brothers. Those were some very, very hard days. The feeling of being left behind. And I vowed that I was going to do something to change the system so no brother or sister who had put their life on line for this country would ever have that stinging feeling again. And I hope that in the time that I've done that and what I will do in the future, I will be able to do that for every veteran and veteran family in this country, because they deserve that. We have to make a decision. We have 13 days to decide the future of this state and essentially the future of this country. We get to decide what the future looks like for our kids. Will they grow up in a country where they can access education and a great paying job, where they have just as many rights as our grandparents did, as our grandmothers did? Because that's the future we have to fight for now. And the energy that we need for that is in this room right now, and it needs to continue for the next 13 days. We have to deliver for Arizona. Voting is definitely on the way. My wife and I, Sydney, just voted a couple days ago, and it is thrilling to be able to return that ballot, not just for me, but for my daughter and for my son, and to put down Vice President, wishing into existence, Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz. And I encourage you all to continue to do the same. Because there is so much at stake, whether it is fighting for our veterans, cutting costs for our families, protecting abortion rights, and so much more. We need someone to go to the Senate that actually represents you and understands you, and understands the people that are working every day just to make it by. The people that make 40 hours into a living wage somehow, and somehow put those 40 hours into 160 hours to actually have a chance at the American dream. Because that's what's missing in the Senate. A person that understands that the dignity of work only matters what you actually can bring to the stability of your family. Where the value that you bring to your family is not just measured by how much you can bring in terms of buying them, but how much you could actually deliver them for a future that they're going to be able to live in. And this is what I am going to bring. I'm a very lucky man that I grew up in the family that I did. My mom was a secretary, raising 4 kids on her own. My first bed, after 7 years, was my college dorm room bed. And every day was a struggle in our family. But we worked together, and we kept fighting every day because we knew that if we did everything right, if I worked that extra hour at the shift line, or I flipped that extra burger and studied a little more, that we were going to live the American dream. Every American deserves that. 26 years ago, if you had been in my apartment, there were 5 people with no college degrees. 26 years later, everyone has a college degree, including my mother, who went back to school after we were done. She sacrificed for us. She knew that everything she put down may not actually benefit her, but in the future, it benefited her kids. And that made every day that struggle a little more. And I've been traveling this state now for 22 months, to the reddest areas of this state, the bluest areas of the state. I've visited our 20 of our 22 tribal nations, visiting with our Native American brothers and sisters, talking to our most recent new citizens, talking to the people that have been here for generations, and they all want the same thing. They want a future for their kids. So this is why the fight matters. Because what we see now is someone that's only going to give us division and hate, not unify Arizona for us to move forward together. Our kids need a unified vision of the future, not someone who wants to separate and scares us. And that's what Kari Lake is. But I have a plan. And if there's a couple of Marines here, they'll tell you we're all about plans, right? You got a plan to win. You got a plan to win. You always have to plan to win. And here's the plan. Number 1, we're going to defeat Kari Lake. Number 2, we're going to defeat Donald Trump. And we are going to fight and win for a better future. That is what we're going to do, Arizona. Now, it is a sincere pleasure to introduce the next president. And I have some notes here that were written, but I'm going to ignore them because for many of us that grew up in the situations that I did, this man from Hope literally did give boys like me hope. I was reading his book in high school and saw that somebody who came from the same situation that I did, someone who grew up without plumbing, was able to make it from Hope to one of the most amazing institutions in the country at Georgetown. I even applied to Georgetown because of him. And then he got a Rhodes Scholarship and went to Yale Law School. I did not do any of that. Not that good. But the fact that I saw somebody who did not have anything handed to him, and he took that little piece of coal that he had and crushed it with all the hope that he could and came out with a diamond, is what made me fight for another day. And that is the same fighter that I am glad to bring on stage, your president, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Madam Mayor, for making me welcome. And I thank all the people here who are part of this campaign, and I want to thank Eden Wen for reminding all of you that we still got 2 weeks of work to do. I'll say more about that in a minute, but you're going to be so happy on election night if we do what we have to do in the next 2 weeks. And one of the things we have to do is elect the man who just introduced me. And I thought, this is like a beautiful microcosm of the campaign that Kamala Harris is running for president. You got a person that grew up under sometimes challenging circumstances, who made something of his life running against someone who is physically attractive but believes that politics is a performance art. And where, like J.D. Vance, she has to be prostrate before the master. And this is all funny to me because I used to play golf with Donald Trump. And he wasn't at all to other people 20 years ago like he is now. But the more I thought about it and the more research I did, the more sense it made. And one of the things that I'm most worried about is just the basic problem. Can you imagine that 40-some% of the American people believe that what they need in the next president is somebody who never takes a breath without bragging on himself? Unless he's bashing someone else. I mean, think about what that means. I said at the convention, you shouldn't count his lies, you should count his eyes. Because, we had a pretty day in Phoenix today. I made that happen. And it rained yesterday. If I'd been president, it never would have happened. Right? I mean, go figure. Today, we got to mention the lies too. Because I woke up this morning at 5:30 and I turned on the news and I saw this, unbelievable clip where President Trump was claiming that 13,099 people that were immigrants, of course, had committed murder. All under Biden and Harris. Did you see the clip? Okay, then I said, there's something funny here. And he said, never before have these figures been released. So I said, I was president once, and I used to get regular reports on what the immigrant population was doing. Maybe I've just forgotten. So anyway, so he's talking, with that way he talks, and he says, it's just terrible, and all these people, we now know for the first time that under this administration, under Biden and Harris, that 13,099, we know the exact number of murderers walking in our midst free. But I'll give it to CNN. They were Johnny on the spot. And they did a lot of quick research, and they said, now we have to tell you that there are reports that some 13,000 people who are immigrants have committed some form of homicide over the last 40 years. Millions of people come into this country, and over 40 years, there were that many instances of homicides. And it turned out that of the people still living and still here who hadn't been deported, a huge number of them were in prison, federal, state, and local. It wasn't that they were unpunished. They weren't walking the streets and stalking people. He just sort of forgot. You know, Trump, he's like I was a kid once. I know every now and then when I do something I shouldn't, I left out inconvenient facts. I mean, what's the difference in 4 years and 40, really? I mean, it would be funny if it weren't serious. And he's feeding this stuff to people who are vulnerable to it. And so, no. The other thing he said was that the Congo, he didn't specify which Congo, whether it was the Democratic Republic of Congo or the smaller Congo. But he did say that they had opened their jails and the government of the Congo had actually assisted some of these murderers in coming to our shores to wreak havoc on our poor, innocent people. Then it turned out that wasn't true either. That was totally made up. And the governments of both countries said, that's the craziest thing I ever heard of. We have had no instance of opening our jails. We would never open our jails. And he said, and furthermore, we would never open our jails and then try to direct people to the United States. I mean, it's literally whatever's necessary to feed that paranoia. And we've gotten to where we laugh about it. And that's a mistake. And I got tickled. I saw one of his former ambassadors talking about how other countries respected him because he was so tough. People do not like it when you lie about them. Anybody with any character doesn't like that. And they do not like it when you lie about what countries do. So here's a case where we'll have to count the lies. But usually it's smarter to count the ayes. And it's really important because we're the best positioned country in the world for the 21st century. Whatever these people want to say, attacking President Biden, when he leaves office, we will have created more jobs in these 4 years than in any 4-year period in the history of America. And now, everybody badmouths it, and people that think it's bad because there's been so much inflation. The problem is that this inflation is present in every rich country on earth. And if you look at what the candidates say, Donald Trump makes a pretty snappy argument. He just says, look, when I was president, we didn't have any inflation. Now we've had it for 3 years. It sucks. You got to elect me and throw them out. You got to beat her. And the problem is, what he wants to do will make it worse. He wants to put all these tariffs on things that we can't buy anywhere else. And it's going to cost the average family about $4,000 a year. And then he wants to have these humongous tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, which will, over a period of years, cost, don't gag, $7.5 trillion. And a big committee of economists, 170 something, I think, that spans the whole gamut from right to left, just analyze the Trump program and the Harris program, and they said 70% of them said hers was dramatically better. His would cost more than twice as much money, would lead to more inflation, would be very painful for middle-income people to bear, and would help far fewer than half as many people as her program. So hers costs less than half as much and helps more than twice as many people. Why? Because it's focused on the middle class and the poor and letting people work their way into it. Now, so I hope she got a chance to explain that tonight. I hadn't seen the town hall meeting, but I'll tell you this. She is the only person that's actually got a program for dealing with the inflation. One, food, right? Two, persistent. Well, what can you do? We can't set prices, but most every state has a law against price gouging. That's where you use a market position to take advantage of it. But now more and more of us buy food from big conglomerates who have huge markets in many states. So Kamala Harris said, I was an attorney general. We had a price gouging law in California, but Red Texas has one too. Most states do. We need a national one because I'll tell you, if people know the Justice Department can investigate this, then they will know they got to be careful in raising food prices too high, and you can know whether they could be lower. It's a simple, practical thing. But Donald Trump didn't propose that. Why? Because that requires some thinking and some work. And it took me 30 seconds to explain it, so we got to have something that drives people around the bend, right? Two, on housing. I just came from Nevada to here today, and they were the third hardest hit state in the first disaster of this new century, the financial crash in 2008. So there were lots of people left. The buildings were vacant, the houses, the apartment houses, and they were picked up by big financial organizations for cheap prices. They bought this stuff cheap as dirt. Now the economy's coming back, and they're charging an arm and a leg. So what are we going to do about it? Donald Trump's happy. He's one more thing he can blame on somebody else. Kamala Harris said, we got a housing shortage. Here's a way we're going to build 3 million more housing units that are affordable. And here's a plan to help people get in them, including paying some of the down payment for hardworking middle-class people so we can get started. Now, then the third thing is very important to you, is that's gasoline prices. So what's happened? They've already been dropping quite a bit, if you've been noticing, right? There's a reason for that. We are now one of the very few countries on earth that produces more energy than we consume for the first time since the 1950s. And so she says, quite properly, what I'm going to do is what we've been doing. We're going to pursue all of the above. We're going to have solar and wind and geothermal. We're going to increase our batteries capacity, but we're also going to do small-scale nuclear, because you can wrap those nuclear pellets in ceramic and they'll last for hundreds of more years than before. And we're going to have natural gas with very strong protections against leaking when they're in the pipeline. And we're going to do all that. And eventually we're going to get greener and greener and greener, but we'll have more jobs and lower prices. Now, it's pretty hard to attack something that's working and creating jobs. So Trump's position is, no, we can't have any of this. You have to hate this, not fix it. And he did the same thing on the border, right? We had an agreement between the White House and the Congress, brokered by Republicans in the Senate and the White House. The Republicans. And President Biden said, look, we got to clean up the chaos, but I don't want any of this stuff we had before. No separating families and children. And let's make decent enough space for people to live along the border. You worry if they run off, but there's no place for them to stay now. We're going to make a place for them to stay. Give me the judges and the investigators to research all the cases. And we'll do this together. You guys write the bill. And they said, deal. And then all of a sudden comes a voice in the wilderness. You can't do that. Why? Because I need a problem. My whole career is based on griping about problems and blaming other people for them. You want to solve this. Are you out of your mind? I mean, we're laughing, but it's true, isn't it? Now, Mayor, you didn't get into politics to gripe, did you? You got in to solve problems. I want Ruben to be a senator because I think he'll be uniquely qualified to work with other people to solve problems. And I'll tell you, but Donald Trump, he admitted, he said, we can't go into this campaign solving a problem like this. I made my bread and butter telling people the border was a mess as long as there was any Democrat breathing alive anywhere. Now, we're laughing, but it's very serious. Because if people get suckered by this one more time, you won't fix the border. The record shows that Trump sent more fully documented immigrants home than undocumented immigrants. It's not about solving a problem. It's about keeping you torn up and upset, full of resentment and anger. And it's crazy because, I'll say it again, we are the best positioned country in the world for the 21st century. Our diversity is an asset. Our documented immigrants are an asset. We got so much out there to do. So I want you to help Ruben win, and I want you to carry Arizona for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Because I know both the candidates quite well. I'm convinced that Kamala Harris will be a good president. And I believe, but we got to show up because they always show up. don't they? But there are more of us than them if we show up. So, the only thing I'm running for is my grandchildren's future. And so I'll just leave you, especially the younger people here, with a little thought. Whether we know it or not, we all keep score. And we're always judging ourselves, our families, our work. We are keeping score. So if you're young, you should decide, how will I keep score? If you're interested in politics, you have to ask yourself, how will I keep score? And one of the things that Hillary and I have learned the hard way is that there are no permanent victories or defeats in politics. So what really matters is something far deeper than that. But when you get to the end of your work life, you want to be able to say, are people better off than when I started? You want to be able to say, the children have a brighter future. You want to be able to say, we still have our differences, and we should, but our common humanity matters more. So we are coming together, not being torn apart. And now, if you can, that's how we keep score in my family. If you can say that people are better off when you quit than when you started, if our children have a brighter future, and we're coming together instead of being torn apart, all the rest is background music. And I do not believe, if you look at your congressman versus Carrie Lake, I don't think it's a close question. Do you? If you look at Kamala Harris versus President Trump, I don't think it's a close question. So I urge you not to go out and badmouth them or get mad and get into fights. You got 2 weeks here where you can go out and talk to your neighbors with an outstretched hand and a smile on your face and say, we have too much going for us in Arizona and the United States to squander these things. And we need your help. Ask people. You know, when I became the first Democrat to win Arizona since 1948, I remember I said a little prayer and I said, I don't have any idea how this happened, except I always kind of felt at home there. And as you can see, I don't give conventional speeches, I just talk to people. And I think we need more of that. We need to be able to look at each other and talk to people. You know, a lot of the people who can be persuaded, I'm not talking about the hardcore, but a lot of people can be persuaded on the other side. They're good people. If they were your neighbors and your house caught on fire, they'd come right over and help you put it out and take the kids to safety. They have been convinced that somehow we are an alien nation to them, and we're not. So put on your game face, reach out your hand, ask them to vote for Ruben, ask them to vote for Kamala, ask them to vote for America's future, ask them to vote for our children. God bless you.